So this is the speaking order, and this is all information, again, that you'll get on the cheat sheet, which will be provided to you. You have constructive speeches, and then you have rebuttal speeches provided here. Constructive speeches will always last 8 minutes, and rebuttal speeches will be 5 minutes. In the constructive speeches, you are simply building your case. You are building your arguments. And in the rebuttal speeches, in the second half of the debates, you're basically explaining what the arguments actually mean. So things are usually kind of muddy. As you're getting through these constructive speeches, you have teams that are just reading a lot of evidence, that are reading a lot of facts, but they're not really explaining it because their opportunity to go through and explain everything usually will come up in the rebuttals. And so that's really all that entails. In rebuttals, you normally don't bring up new arguments because they were all introduced in the constructive speeches a little bit earlier. So that's really the only distinction. In constructive speeches, you're building your arguments, and the rebuttal arguments, you're explaining your arguments. You're explaining why your arguments have actually won you the debate round. And so you don't really introduce or build arguments when you're down here. So some of the typical rules of debate, and debaters love to talk about the rules of debate, especially young debaters who haven't been in the activity very long, because who doesn't love a good set of rules that can immediately win you the debate round? However, something to keep in mind is that in debate, the only rules are the time limits as well as rules regarding the sharing of evidence. If a team reads evidence in the round and the other team asks to see it, it has to be provided in a form that's usable to them. And then they have to just make certain that they return that evidence before the next speech in the round. However, debaters love to talk about rules. However, there really aren't rules so much as traditions that have existed in the world of debate. Keep in mind, this is an activity that's been around for decades in the United States, and so there have been different ways and different norms that have been established with debate. This isn't quite like football or basketball where you have very clearly established and defined rules. In debate, the rules are up to debate, and that's why we don't really call them rules so much as traditions. So one of those traditions that have existed is that there are no new arguments in the rebuttals. And that was something that we just addressed, and the reason that has been a tradition is because it's really something that comes down to a fairness thing. Teams really need a full round to try to debate everything that has been introduced. And so if you wait until the rebuttals to try to introduce arguments, then the opposing team hasn't gotten a chance to cross-examine that information. They can't call for evidence at that point, and it's really tough to answer arguments when they are all introduced in the last speech in the debate round, and that's just a fairness issue that will usually come up. So if an argument is introduced in the rebuttals, usually it's a good idea to just not consider that and just write on the ballot that was a new argument that was introduced a little too late. Another tradition is something called silence is compliance. If an argument is not answered in the following speech, then it is considered a dropped argument, and the team that did not answer it ends up losing that argument. And this is, again, something that comes down to fairness. If the affirmative team introduces a lot of arguments and the negative team waits until the very end of the debate round to try to answer everything, then it's really tough for the affirmative team to go up and try to give a response to everything that the negative team just said. So again, it's just making certain that all of the speeches are important and that everything is protected within the debate round. And then finally, another tradition is to only vote on what the negative team argues in the 2NR. That's the last speech that the negative team has. Everything else by that point has essentially been dropped. And so the affirmative team may or may not still win all of these arguments, but the negative team should have narrowed down their arguments by this point. So if the negative team starts off the debate round talking about topicality, but in their last speech they don't even mention topicality, then that's not something to really consider. That's an acknowledgement by the negative team that, yeah, that was a bad argument. We're not going to try to win the debate round on that anymore. So deciding who won. There are two ways that you can approach the debate round and use them to try to weigh the round. What I usually encourage judges to follow is this policymaker-judge paradigm, and that's essentially you just weigh the advantages of doing the plan versus the disadvantages. And you might still consider issues like topicality and harms and inherency and everything as well, but you're just, as a policymaker, you're acting as if you were the President of the United States, and you are just deciding, okay, is it a better idea to do the plan, or is it a better idea to stick with the status quo and to not do the plan? And so you just weigh the impacts of both against each other. Another way that you could assess the round is as a stock issues judge. The stock issues are listed down here: inherency, solvency, topicality, and harms. There is an extra one called significance, but it's usually never addressed. So that's the discrepancy between 5 stock issues and only 4 of them being listed down here. Keep in mind the negative team in the stock issues judge paradigm would need to win one of those stock issues. However, if the affirmative team wins all of them, then they end up winning the debate round. And if you were to break this down logically, it makes sense. If the affirmative team hasn't proven how they're going to solve the problem, then they don't have solvency, which means that their plan just would not work. If there are no harms, then that means that there's nothing wrong with the status quo. There's really no reason to do the team's plan. And so that's one way that you can assess the round. However, like I said, stock issues, judging that is usually kind of difficult, and so I usually encourage people just to look at it as a policymaker. You just look at which side convinced you the most. Okay, filling out the debate ballot. If you would like to pause this screen and take a look at the ballot, you also will receive a sample ballot as well, connected with your judge cheat sheet or your crib sheet as well. But in order to fill this out, we're just going to cover a couple of quick things, and all of the instructions are listed down here over at the side. The information here at the top in round, room, and judge name, all of that is going to be filled out by us, and you will pick up this ballot at the judges table when you arrive at the tournament just before the round actually begins. The affirmative team will fill out their codes, or the affirmative and negative team will fill out their codes as well as their names and their speaker positions. So this information right here, you don't need to fill in. Same thing with the other side. All you need to fill in are going to be the debaters' ranks, which are right here, as well as which team did the better job of debating, which will be on this line, and then you sign the ballot as well. At the end of the round, you need to make certain, or even during the round, you could be filling this out, you need to provide some comments for both teams. Okay, that's probably the main thing. I always tell my debaters there is no such thing as a bad ballot unless nothing is written on it, because debaters are going to be pretty competitive. They want to improve. They want to know what they could have done differently in order to win the round. And so just be honest. If the topicality argument maybe was all that they talked about, but you just flat out didn't understand that, then that's something that you can write down, and that's something that you can tell them. They may not be the most happy about it, but they'll at least understand what they could have done maybe differently within that debate round, and that's something they can use to get better. The only other issue to really address, make certain that you fill in the basis for your decision and be specific down there. And whenever you fill in the debater's rank, essentially what you're doing is you're ranking them 1 through 4. So the best debater in the debate round is going to get the 1, and the worst debater, or the least successful debater, would be receiving the 4. And there's nothing wrong with receiving the 4. Someone has to get it every round, and if it's a close round, I mean, there's really no shame in receiving that rank. But if a team has won the round, then they need to have a total of 5 or fewer rankings, which means that you can receive the 1 and the 4 and you can still win. You can receive the 2 and the 3 and still win, but you cannot receive the 2 and the 4 or the 3 and the 4 and still win that debate round. And logically, if the team that lost has the 2 best debaters in it, well, then really they should have won if they were just overall better. So that's something just to determine and to keep in mind as you're getting these ranks in. And if this is confusing, don't worry about it. At our judges table, my students are going to be checking in these ballots. They'll be sure to take a look at those as well and make certain that they're filled out correctly, and they'll just pull you aside and have you fix it if there are any issues when it comes to that. So if you'd like to pause the screen as well, these are just some sample comments of some things that you could write down on a ballot, because that's a question I get all the time from judges, is that they want to put comments down, but they don't know like what are some common comments that other people will have. And so if you'd like to take a look at some of these different comments that are here, that would be a pretty good idea, especially if you've never provided comments down before. But again, just be honest with the debaters and tell them what you either liked or didn't like throughout the debate round. So some final notes. When you come out to the tournament, you do not have to dress up. Students are generally expected that they're going to dress nice and that they're going to dress to impress. So the guys will be wearing suits, girls will be wearing dresses or professional dress. I mean, they could wear pantsuits or something else like that, but you do not have to. Okay. Again, just to reiterate, there are no wrong decisions in a debate round. The burden is on each team to convince you. Okay, and so if they fell short, then they're going to lose that debate round. If they were successful, then heck, then they're going to win that debate round. Just be honest with them about your experience. They may even ask you what your judging experience is like, and that's not because they are looking to see whether or not they should be discouraged by having you as their judge. They just want to know how they should be approaching you, how they should be focusing their arguments. You know, if they have a judge who has maybe never seen a debate round before, maybe they shouldn't be running that topicality argument that they've been working on for so long. So they just want to know what your experience is. Just be honest with them if this is your first tournament, and they'll understand. You do not need to keep time. The debaters should have their own timers, and they should be timing themselves and each other. This is something that they do throughout the season, so it should not be new for them to be expected to time each other. If one team forgot to bring their timer and the other team didn't, the other team's going to be the one keeping time for everyone in that debate round. Okay, finally, thank you so much again for judging. We look forward to having you out at our tournament next week. And if you have any questions whatsoever, send me an email at abbauer88@gmail.com. And again, that's abbauer88@gmail.com. Or you can give me a quick phone number. My number is area code 785-201-4166. Thank you so much again for agreeing to judge for us. We look forward to hosting you.